Okay, good morning, everybody. Wow, I love that score. Welcome to OP Radio episode number 4. My name is Mac. I'm a content strategist at OP Labs. We've got a very special episode today. We're joined by the Lattice team. I've also got my colleague Annie here with me. Annie, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I work at Optimism on protocol collaboration. So I've been working a bit with the Lattice team on getting OPCraft out the door and really excited to talk to everyone about it today.
Yes, indeed. And before we dig into all that, I want to just give the Lattice team a chance to introduce themselves. So, Lattice folks, do you want to tell us who you are?
For sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Alvarius. I started Lattice together with Ludens a little over 18 months ago. And then in the beginning, we started working on one specific on-chain game. And then since then have switched to building an on-chain game engine about 1 year ago, or maybe eight months ago. Yeah.
And hey, everyone. I'm Biscarin. I joined Alvarius and Ludens on this project about a few months ago and have been working on this since.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Thanks for that introduction. So maybe before we get into this incredible thing that you guys recently announced, I want to know, what is Lattice and who is Lattice? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we were originally a project that spun out of Xerix Park, and currently we have two main areas of focus. So one is MUD, and you can access that on mud.dev. And MUD is essentially an engine for autonomous worlds and on-chain games. It's open source. Everyone can build using MUD. And our second area of focus is to build these kind of ambitious autonomous worlds ourselves. So at the moment, we have two projects going on. One is called Skystripe, which is a fully on-chain RTS. And the other one is, of course, OPCraft.
Interesting. So you guys started with Xerix Park and sort of spun out of there. How did you end up building on Optimism? And when did that begin?
We first started building on Optimism actually when we were working on the first specific, in particular, game that we were working on 18 months ago. And the reason why we started working on Optimism is because everything was open source, or everything is open source, and we wanted to run our own rollups for the games we were running. And so we started exploring Optimism, and then we slowly became friends with the folks at Optimism. And then, a couple of weeks ago, in an internal hackathon at Lattice, we built a little OPCraft demo. It wasn't called OPCraft back then, but it was a little Minecraft clone that we built. And then we invited Optimism over to have a look at it because we knew there's also a bunch of Minecraft fans at Optimism. And that's how the collaboration began.
Awesome. And that brings us to the heart of the matter and the reason I stayed up last night, which is this fully on-chain crafting-based voxel game called OPCraft that is built on a fork of Optimism. Can you guys just I want to hear in your own words, how would you explain OPCraft?
Yeah, OPCraft, as you said, is a fully on-chain voxel game. And we built it initially as a way to demonstrate what you can build with MUD, with the game engine that we're developing. And then we started the collaboration with Optimism to also show what is possible with the OP stack. With a couple of minor modifications, we're not now able to run this own rollup with much higher gas throughput and shorter block time than usual. But yeah, OPCraft is a fully on-chain voxel game. It has an infinite procedurally generated world you can go explore. It's also the entire state is stored on chain. The terrain generation happens in a closed form procedural generation function, and then every time somebody modifies the world, that's a transaction that goes onto the chain, and then the difference to that procedural generation is essentially stored in the ECS state, in the entity component system state on chain.
Awesome. And if you're attending this space live, I've pinned to the space a tweet thread explaining more about OPCraft. In a lot of the announcements that you guys made and the guest blog posts that we published to our dev blog, you talk about autonomous worlds and you refer to OPCraft as an autonomous world. Could you explain that a little bit? What is an autonomous world?
Yep. So an autonomous world, basically, you can see it as a evolution of on-chain games, right? So like Alvarius was alluding to, it's a world where all the rules and all the entities are captured on chain. So what this allows you to do beyond a traditional game is that it has a very real claim to longevity and a really good claim towards ownerlessness. So comparing it to a traditional game where you have a game company that owns the game, can change the past of the game, can change the rules of the game at any time, an autonomous world can very easily forego having that owner at all. And everything is just the physics of the world, the rules of the world, and then everything and the rules cannot be changed, the past cannot be altered, and it also will survive the world will survive for as long as the chain that it is operating on has one single full node operating on it. So it has a really good claim towards longevity. So in short, it's kind of like a world that has no owner and can kind of live forever.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm reminded of a story that's, a legend or a myth at that point with Vitalik and playing World of Warcraft and some heavy-handedness maybe by Blizzard, and then he started Ethereum. So this is giving me echoes of that great legend. Very cool. So I think you just described some of the reasons of like why build a game on chain and sort of what the benefits are there. I want to talk a little bit more like about the game itself, because I've been in there. I've been having a blast. It's super addictive. What do you expect to have people to do in there? What do you think we'll see in OPCraft?
There's basically different levels to it. The first level is you can just join. You can go to the world opcraft.mat.dev, and you can start building and you can start collaborating with other people and build huge structures. So that's the first thing we expect to happen. And right now there's just a couple of small buildings, but we expect there to be like much larger monuments and collaborations between different peoples and communities coming in there and like building their castle or whatever. And then on the next level, essentially, you can start exploring the code base. We open sourced everything, and you can start extending OPCraft. And that's the great thing with building on Mud, on the game engine that we're developing, is you can basically add new content to the game, new physics to the core physics. And then not everybody will have those physics by default, but people can opt into using those new physics, those new components, those new contracts as well. And yeah, this is basically the first time. We've been talking about this for a while now when we were talking about Mud, but this is the first actual like live project built with Mud. So this is the first time this can actually happen. And we already have some people building augmented realities, as we call them, on top of this. Yeah. So this is very exciting to see what people will come up with.
Yeah, I caught your talk at DevCon about Mud, and Justin used the illusion of tennis. Like we're all living sort of in the same reality, but then there are other people who are maybe opting into a different set of rules on top of that reality. So it's sort of an extra layer. And I get the sense that when I'm playing OPCraft, not being a coder myself, I'm sort of playing on one level. My understanding is that basically like people can write scripts and do different things because it is a smart contract to alter the physics of the game. Is that correct? Or how would you explain that? Because it's a little heady to wrap your head around.
Yeah. Totally. So what you said, right? In this world that we live in, like the quote unquote real world, we have obviously a set of rules, which is physics that we all kind of abide to. But then is not altering the set of physics, right? But more kind of what you can do on top. So what people can agree to as a community to do on top of it. So you raised the example that we used of tennis. So tennis obviously operates on the laws of physics, also the ball, the racket, and the people hitting the balls. But the rules are kind of a rule set that is agreed upon by the players. So, it takes, if the ball crosses the pitch and lands at this spot, it's counted as legal, and you have these points, and if you have this many points, you win. So people agree on these rules, and then they can have games on top. So it's kind of like an augmented reality, right? And another example that we like to use is kind of like capitalism, for example. It does not exist in the rules of physics, but we all agreed as people to opt into this augmented reality of capitalism, where you can say, oh, I want to buy this thing off you for an X amount of money. And people can, and that's what we hope to see in OPCraft, and what we're starting to see in OPCraft is we have a set of physics, so the blocks and how you can interact with the blocks. You can mine them, you can craft them, you can trade them with other people. And then the interesting thing will be what will be possible on top. So people can opt into, let's say, playing a game of chess in OPCraft. They can assign certain blocks as game pieces. And then people who opt into playing chess on OPCraft can have a different client or plugin onto their browser that allows them to see the chess game. And the people who haven't opted in can still see the game taking place, but they just won't know what's exactly happening and the scores and who's won, all of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it sounds like almost like a meta game is how I would describe it.
Correct, yeah.
So we've already seen like some cool structures being built. There's like this huge spire, it reminds me of like Jack and the Beanstalk. There's a building with a nice garden on the roof. A lot of people are making tunnels. Have we seen any examples of this sort of meta game being played yet?
Not really, because we publicly launched yesterday, and I think in the beginning everybody's just overwhelmed by what you can do on level 0, essentially, by just joining the world and building stuff. And only now, mainly powered by the wish to find more diamonds, people start looking at the code and start realizing, well, what you can build on top of this.
Yeah, I already saw in the Discord people trying to hack their way into finding a lot of diamonds. I just did it the old-fashioned way by strolling around the mountains. I really enjoyed myself.
I feel
when you mentioned, sorry, Annie.
Oh, no worries. I was going to comment that one type of metagame is not exactly on the code level basis, but I'm starting to see people stake out territories and build out like structures that are kind of dedicated to a theme, whether that's like an optimism project or people spelling out things they like. So that's kind of the social layer of metagaming that's so far been going on in the game, and it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. Without this augmented reality layer that hopefully we'll see over the coming days. One really cool thing that I saw on Discord was somebody fell into a hole and then people in the community actually built a stair for him to climb up. And I thought that was pretty cool. And also, of course, on the other side of that coin, there's also people who is now building holes and staking the hole so that people literally cannot build out of it. But yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Okay, so just so people understand, so people essentially are building booby traps, like bottomless pits that players fall into, but then other players were building steps for them to get out. But you can, this is good because it brings up a question I have about diamonds. Diamonds are rare and valuable because they allow you to basically make things permanent in game, right? So these people who are building these booby traps can sort of preserve them with the diamonds. Is that correct?
That's correct, yeah. The fundamental mechanic here is we wanted to make it such that people can protect their chunk so that not just somebody can come and break the chunk, but at the same time, we didn't want to make it permanent. So we built it into the game mechanics that you can find diamonds and then you can stake diamonds in a chunk. And then if you have the highest stake in the chunk, then you can claim the chunk, which means only now you can build in this chunk. But theoretically, if somebody else really, really wants to build in this chunk because it's a very, valuable chunk, very close to the spawn, or has a very beautiful structure on top of it, they can find more diamonds and stake them in the chunk and basically overtake your claim if they stake more diamonds and then claim the chunk and then they take it over.
Interesting. So whoever has the most diamonds really has a lot of control in game.
Yeah, exactly. But the great thing is that everybody, the chances, it's not like you can buy diamonds with ETH, at least not for now, until somebody builds a smart contract to do that. But everybody has the same chance to find diamonds or explore the codes and find out where the diamonds are.
I think we can expect a market for diamonds very soon, given how precious a resource they are. What if I have a few diamonds and I want to team up with other people who also have a few diamonds? Can we cooperate and pull those diamonds together to claim a chunk?
That's another interesting thing that basically is enabled by this being built on chain. It's not in the core physics. Like right now, every player has their own address, and staking a diamond in a chunk is bound to that address. But because this is built on chain, somebody can just build a smart contract or proxy contract that then you send your transactions to, and the smart contract then mines the block or stakes the diamonds and holds the diamonds, and then the people who want to build in that chunk send a transaction to that smart contract, and then the smart contract builds it for them. So yeah, this is something that is basically uniquely enabled by this being on the blockchain. We didn't have to build this into the core physics, and we actively build it into the core physics because it's a very simple thing that people can add on top of this and then realize what else can be built on top of this.
Amazing. Pulling back from sort of the in-game mechanics of which I'm sure we could just talk at great length for, and I think probably a better venue for that is Lattice's Discord, which we'll plug at the end. Let's talk a little bit more about Mud, which is what OPCraft is built on. Can you just give us a little more information on that? Mud is essentially the gaming engine that you built this autonomous world with, right?
Yeah, exactly. So as I mentioned in the beginning, we at Lattice in the very beginning, 18 months ago, we started building our a very specific on-chain game. We were in contact we were friends with the people from Dark Forest, and so we also wanted to build another specific on-chain game. And then we worked on that for a couple of months, and we're basically after 4 or 6 months maybe, we're ready to play test. And then we started playtesting and realized it's actually not as fun as we thought in theory, which we only realized after playtesting it, which we only could do after we were done, or after we were in a state where we could do playtesting, right? And then we wanted to modify the physics or the rules of this game to make it more fun. But then we realized the architecture that we use actually didn't really allow for modifying those game rules without refactoring the entire game and refactoring the entire networking stack, and so on and so on. And then in the beginning, we didn't even think about building a game engine yet, but rather we just wanted to find a better architecture for this one game that we wanted to build. And then we found a better architecture and built it in a very general way, and then realized this is actually not bound to this game that we wanted to build in any way, but rather very general, and anything else can be built on top of that. And then after we're done, I'm gonna talk about what Mud is in a second. But just to finish up this little story, after we were done building Mud, now we were able to build OPCraft in literally the first version in 2 days. And then a little more polished. I think we were working on this for now 5 or 6 weeks. But even now with the final polished version, build it in 6 weeks. It's the difference to before that we had to work for 5 months to even have a play testable version of the game. And now maybe some details on Mud. I would recommend if you're interested in Mud in the details, I would recommend you going to mud.dev. There's 2 talks linked that we gave at DevCon, and also just some general information documentation on the website. But as a quick crash course in Mud is built around the pattern of ECS, Entity Component Systems, which is a very popular pattern in traditional game development, but not really used in on-chain game development until now. And so we built Mud around ECS, where in ECS every entity is just just an identifier. So in our case, a UN256. And then we have components that store the data for those entities. And then we have systems that implement logic on top of these components. And so as an example, a block in OPCraft is just an entity, so just a UN256. But then there are 2 components attached to it, which is the item component, which stores which type of item this block is, which type of block it is, and then the position component if it is placed in the world. Or if somebody mines the block, then the position component is removed and the owned by component instead is added. And so entities in Mud or entities in ECS in general are not custom structures or whatever, but rather just a collection of the components that are attached to this, to the entity. And then what this enables is a couple of things. The first thing is you can write your systems not specific to the types of entities you want to modify, but rather only to the components that are present on this entity. So a classic example that we like to give in a different game, we have different types of units and they can all move. And so we just attach a position component and a movable component to them. And now we have a move system which moves those entities if they have the position component and the movable component. But it doesn't care about whether this is currently a fighter or a horse or a donkey. It just cares about whether it has those components present, and then it can implement the logic to move those entities to a different place. And the other thing that this general architecture enables is that now we can generalize the whole networking stack, because all the data is stored in the same standardized way, in the same components, or the same type of components. By the way, components are contracts in this case. Every time a component contract is registered, it is every time a component contract is created, it is registered in the central world contract. And then in our networking stack, we just listen to the update stream of events that's coming through the world contract every time any of those component contracts is updated. And then we can implement our generalized networking stack that basically syncs the contract and client state based on these very general patterns. And that means, again, we don't have to re-implement the entire networking stack for every specific game we're building, but rather can just implement it once, which we did with Mud. And now for every game we're building or anybody else is building, they don't have to worry about that and can just focus on actually making games that are fun and thinking about the game design and game mechanics, which are like a whole different topic and very hard in itself without even having to worry about the whole networking stack.
So I have a question for y'all. Since this is while building Mud, it's kind of the Lattice team engaged in like extreme dogfooding, where you're building the game engine as well as building a game on top of a game engine. So I'm wondering, how was building OPCraft while building Mud itself? Did you make any design choices that changed because of doing one thing and the other simultaneously? And how does it manifest in the game?
Yeah, so the interesting thing is we started building Mud and also dogfooding with a different game, which is called Skystrife, which you haven't publicly released yet. But it's a very different game. It's a completely different genre. It's an on-chain RTS game. It's 2D, top-down. You explore a map. You can build an army and then defeat your opponents and so on. But it's like it has nothing to do with OPCraft. And we basically built Mud in the beginning around this type of game, but still wanted to stay very general. And then in this internal hackathon that I mentioned in the beginning, we basically just wondered, because like I said, we're all Minecraft fans, we just wondered how hard it would be to implement a completely different game genre on Mud, which was initially not built for a game like this, right? And then we were able to build it in 2 days without any changes to the engine, which then we were very happy about, because it meant the engine is actually general enough that we can build different types of game on it. And now over the last couple of weeks, we while building OPCraft and Mud, we did some minor changes. I mean, we found some bugs and did some improvements, did some performance improvements, but we didn't have to change anything about the architecture of Mud itself, which makes me personally very happy, because otherwise it would be a problem if for every game we want to build, we would have to change Mud. And then every time somebody else wants to build on Mud, who maybe doesn't have merge access to the Mud repo, then maybe they couldn't do it. So that would be bad. By the way, I'm not sure if I mentioned, but Mud is also open source for free, available on the Lattice GitHub, as well as the OPCraft code.
Yeah, so you guys have really created this template, if you will, to make it a lot easier for people to create games. And so I'm curious, has anybody taken advantage of that yet, considering it's open source? Have you seen anybody creating anything yet, or are we still waiting?
We're actually running a little autonomous world residency in London right now, and invited a couple of teams who are all interested in building games, either just generally interested or have been working on on-chain games before, or have been working in traditional games before. And so we brought them all to London to a big co-working space, and are now working together with them, basically building games on Mud. So we're for sure going to see a lot of very interesting projects launch on Mud in this year. So. And also after the conference, after we basically publicly announced Mud, there's been a lot of outreach in people just generally interested in building, having questions, and interested in chatting. But since the conference was a couple of days ago, haven't been able to follow up to all of those yet.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't want to join the Autonomous Worlds residency? That sounds amazing. So we talked a little bit about Mud. Let's talk a little bit about Optimism in the OP stack, because this is what you ended up building OPCraft on. Can you walk us through that decision, what it was like building on the OP stack?
Yeah, so we were already sure we wanted to build all of this on a rollup that then settles on something more secure. And then basically it was kind of obvious to use Optimism because everything is open source and it has a great license that allows us to basically fork it and use it in whatever way we want. And so we started, spinning up a testnet for Bedrock, a couple months ago, and started working with it. And it was surprisingly easy. We did run into a couple of hiccups in the very beginning. There was apparently before we just talked to Kevin the other day, and there was apparently before Optimism had their own Bedrock testnet running. So we did run into a couple of small hiccups, but now everything's running very smoothly. And the great thing is for OPCraft, we didn't really have to make a lot of deep changes. The only changes that were made is increasing the gas throughput and decreasing the block time. So yeah, it was a very pleasant experience overall.
Interesting. Yeah. So with those two small modifications, basically you were able to get OPCraft up and running.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, MUD in general runs on any like EVM compatible chain. And because Optimism is like fully EVM equivalent, there's really no difference in running this versus versus any other EVM chain. And in the beginning, we were testing on like an internal EVM, like proof of authority, like sidechain, if you want to call it like that, or like test chain. And now we're just doing everything on Optimism because it's literally like equally easy.
Yeah, I wanted to shout out Alvarius and the Lattice team for actually testing our alpha software, or slowly getting less alpha software that OPCraft is actually launched on our Bedrock code base, which will be the upgrade that's coming to Optimism mainnet or later coming a little later. But y'all have really helped us refine this chain to the most it can be.
Absolutely. And I just want to say how fun it is to play OPCraft. Like I said, I was up late last night. Speaking of alpha, Alvarius, where can I find more diamonds?
That is the single most common question that we receive. And actually, I answered this question in a talk at DEF CON. It's available on mud.dev. I think I'm not gonna give everybody the like full answer here, but it is like the world is procedurally generated. So there's a closed form function that basically tells you for every coordinate in the world what block is at that position. And then for diamonds, it's kind of random, but it's also kind of deterministic. And I would recommend everybody who's really interested just diving into the code and finding out for yourself, because everything is open source and we want to encourage people digging around with it and building stuff on top. Yeah.
Ooh, that's very interesting. Okay, so you can look at this open source code and basically figure out where diamonds are more likely to be.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I'm going to do that myself personally. I'm probably just going to keep sort of strolling the mountains, but definitely encourage other people to.
Yeah. And it's also like you mentioned before, it's also a matter of time until somebody will figure out where most of the diamonds are, like how it's more likely to get diamonds, and then write some augmented reality or like a smart contract on top of OPCraft that is essentially a merchant contract where now you can buy diamonds at a block at the spawn. When you click it, there's maybe a little JavaScript plugin that then opens a little store UI where then people can either trade other types of blocks, which are maybe even more rare than diamonds, which people haven't even realized they exist yet, and either can trade those blocks or maybe buy it with like general testnet ETH. So yeah, I'm just waiting for all of this to happen.
Okay, Alvarius, I respect that you're not going to tell us where the diamonds are located. I respect that. How about maybe a little less strong alpha, like I saw in the Discord how to craft glass. Can you tell people how to craft glass?
Oh yeah, that's a less critical one. You can craft glass by putting sand all around in your crafting table. So first of all, you need a crafting table. People who have played Minecraft before should know how to make a crafting table. For the rest of us, you just put 4 planks in your inventory in the crafting, and then you get a crafting table. So you have a bigger crafting area. And then all around, you can place some sand. And then in the middle, you just place a coal block, which is also relatively rare, but not as rare as diamonds. And then you have glass.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna craft some glass, and I'm going to dig a big tunnel, and we're gonna throw a cave rave underneath the Optimism castle.
And just jumping in on the recipes, because the one that gets asked all the time is how do you dye wool? Well, so for that one, it's actually quite tricky. You have to put the wool on top of the flower, of the colorful flower in the crafting UI, and that's how you get a dyed wool.
That's right. Yeah, I figured that out last night. I was like dropping it on it and it was swapping it out, but you need to place it on top of the other resource in the crafting table to get dyed wool.
Yeah, and we actively didn't make it the quote unquote original Minecraft recipes because we feel like it's kind of boring now that like all the Minecraft recipes are online. You can just go any website and find them, or I think at this point even in the client itself. So for OPCraft, the interesting thing is the recipes are also represented as entities on chain, but they're just represented as the hash of the ingredients that you need to craft this item. So it's basically not quite obvious before somebody discovers this new recipe what the recipe will be, and then people can explore a little bit by themselves or share some tribal knowledge in the Discord, or have some more exploration.
Right, you need to get in there and experiment, right? That's the whole idea.
Should we maybe say some blocks that people have not figured out yet as a hint? Ovarius?
I haven't seen a single brick block in the world yet, so that's that's probably one of them.
I tried to make brick last night, but I couldn't. Should we drop the recipe for brick?
I feel like we should leave some room for more exploration. Sure. There's also mossy cobblestone, which is quite interesting, but also not going to tell you the recipe for this one.
Fair enough. Yeah, we want people to get in there and explore this autonomous world for themselves and experiment and figure it out, because that's half the fun. Okay, guys, I think we're kind of winding down here. Annie, did you have any other questions or comments for the Lattice folks?
Yeah, I feel like this is obviously we've been working together a bunch, but I'm wondering for going forward with Mud, how do you imagine people developing on Mud itself, in addition to just the OPCraft game?
Are you talking about building like their own games on top of Mud, or are you talking about like collaborating on Mud itself, on the engine?
On Mud itself, yeah.
On Mud
we
itself.
Build open source software, and this is, I think, collaboration is one huge thing that's will happen on multiple levels of not just building the game, but building the tool that builds the game. How do y'all think about it?
Right, totally. Yeah, we open sourced Mud with exactly this in mind. So we don't want to be the ones who basically own Mud and then sell licenses to other people, but rather we want to push the whole industry of on-chain games forward, and we want to like benefit from the industry just like being bigger and more on-chain games existing and everybody benefiting from this. And so we, like I said, we don't want to own Mud. It is open source. Everybody can go onto GitHub and open a PR. And if it's something that's general enough so that it benefits everybody and not just the specific game that whoever is making the PR is making, then we're gonna merge it, and then it's gonna benefit all of us. So please go ahead. Please, the documentation is not great right now. This is our main focus for the next for the rest of the year probably. We want to improve the documentation so that people have an easier time diving into Mud and understanding the like core concept and technologies. And then I think the best way to collaborate actually, or like to contribute to Mud, is to start building something on top of Mud and then realizing maybe something is not possible that you want to do, and then adding a PR or like contributing and making it possible for you and then also for everybody else in the future who wants to build this.
Oh, cool. Yeah, we love open source software, and we also love rushing products out sometimes with no docs, but I feel like growing as a company does force you to mature that way. So I'm excited for y'all to both have good documentation and have people who read code without. Another question I have is, now that we have kind of a big audience here, do you have any requests in terms of things to be built in OPCraft? Yeah, like any requests on people building things. Like this is, I feel like we can have a bounty time of asking people for things, whether that's physical things or kind of in-game items. Like, how serious are you about getting Uniswap in a cave?
That would be for sure an interesting proof of concept. But there's a couple of very obvious things that people can build that I've mentioned already. First of all, a proxy contract that allows people to basically play collaboratively within a chunk. So right now, only one person can build in a chunk, but it's extremely easy. It's almost trivial to build this little contract that allows then many people to collaborate on a chunk. So that's the first thing that I would like people to. I mean, everything is open source already, so people can have a look at the contracts. There is one contract that doesn't have a UI yet, which is the transfer system, which allows you to basically send blocks that you own to another address. And we added this because we thought this like unlocks a couple of interesting things that people can build on top of it, like block shops like marketplaces, or just simple UI to send to other people. That is on the like very obvious missing pieces side that people can build on top. And then I think a very interesting proof of concept would be to build one of those augmented realities or like games within the game on top of OPCraft, where maybe you add some more components and some more types of entities, and then you have another type of game on top of OPCraft. Like a friend of us here at DEF CON was thinking about building a little arena in OPCraft, like with blocks in OPCraft. And then within those arenas, within this arena, he could render with a little JavaScript plugin for the client. He could render a totally different type of game, maybe where you control some kinds of entities that then can attack each other or whatever. That would be very exciting to see that on top as well. Another augmented reality that we have incoming by someone who approached us at DEF CON is a little showcase contract where basically people can register their chunks or multiple, like an area, many chunks together in the showcase. And then you can have a little like UI in the client that shows you all the chunks that people are proud of. And then people can vote on those chunks and maybe even fund the building of those chunks. Because right now, you can't bridge ETH from like the L1 to this testnet, but rather it all works through the bridge. So the supply is limited. But now if somebody wants to build a really massive structure through this showcase augmented reality, we will then have a way for other people to fund this person or this group who wants to build this massive structure and provide them with either blocks or more ETH to pay the gas fees.
I really want someone to put motorcycle helmets on the avatars. So if somebody could get busy doing that, I'd really appreciate it. Motorheads, if you don't know, is an NFT project on Optimism. I think that'd be really cool.
People online, I personally am going to request a get out of a cave free function, either in the UI or as some sort of special block I can invoke, because I've been trying to get out of a hole since this space started.
That's very good.
I think they said there's a respawn, Annie. Is the respawn not working?
I spawn into this hole every single time, but this is between me and the Lattice Discord afterwards if this doesn't work. At this point, I'm climbing my way out. I just tried again.
That's amazing. Okay, well, I have a few things to tell folks before we wrap this up, but Annie, once again, do you have anything else you'd like to ask the Lattice team?
Let me think. Do you have an OP stack feature request?
Oh, that was a great question. We would like to be able to run games for even cheaper if the security requirements are not as big. And I know it's relatively easy to do this ourselves with the OP stack because it's so modular. But it would be great to have an alternative data availability layer that is not L1, but something else that makes it even cheaper if we do not care as much about the security guarantees as maybe other DeFi apps or something. I would care about.
Yeah, that was a great feature request, and this will get brought back to the team. That's it for me, Mac.
Awesome. Okay, so everybody, if you want to play this incredible autonomous world game, go to opcraft.mud.dev. I do want to call out that this is getting spun down and the game will be frozen at midnight on October 31st. Okay, so you have a limited time to get in there, build your structures, make your mark in this autonomous world for perpetuity, for the rest of history. And also, I want to direct you to the technology that enabled this, which is not just MUD, which we've talked a lot about, but OPStack, which we recently made some announcements about. And you can read up more on that at optimism.mirror.xyz, or just check out the tweet thread from the Optimism Twitter that we put out. So I want to thank my colleague Annie for joining us, and I want to give a huge shout out to the Lattice team. This is so cool. We're so excited, and we can't wait to see what else gets built with it. And thank you for joining us on OP Radio, guys.
Thanks very much. It was a pleasure.
Okay, guys, we'll see you in OPCraft. We'll see you there. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.